Die like these is the title of this devotional. In Genesis 48, Joseph was told that his father Jacob was sick. So Joseph went to his father, Joseph went to his father, taking his two sons, the grandsons of Jacob. And of course, we know that there Jacob tells Joseph of God's promise to bless his descendants and give them the land of Canaan from which he came as an inheritance. And of course, then Jacob entered into the blessing of his other sons. It says in Hebrews 11, verse 21, by faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of his sons and worshiped, leaning on top of his staff, especially pertaining to blessing the sons of Joseph. Those were the first ones that he blessed. An interesting verse is found in Genesis 48, and make sure on that. 48 verse 2, it says, and that Jacob strengthened himself and sat up on his bed. This is something that does happen. Sometimes with those who are passing on, it seems like sometimes there is a renewed strength in them just before they pass on. They might say some words of encouragement or say something to you, and you think things are getting better, but then, of course, they recline and pass on. I've seen that happen in life and in death. But after he blessed, rewarded his sons with a future that they had built for themselves by their own faith, their own actions, it says in Genesis 49, verse 33, that he drew his feet up on his bed and breathed his last. In a day that 80% of Americans says die in institutions rather than at home, a large percentage of those die with no families around them. It might be hard for some families to identify coming together in a large group in the home, being with their loved ones as they pass away. I think that may have happened for Marilyn with her family. I've seen it in other families where the loved one would come home, die at home around their family. But some people don't understand this. But we as Christians, I think that we should try to emulate this in our families as much as possible to allow them to say what they'd like to say if they can to us. And then for us not to say goodbye, especially to one who is dying in the Lord and faithful, but to say, I will see you soon. Because it's just a short passage here, a little while. So I believe as Christian families, we should try to emulate this in the last days of our loved ones, if possible. As we learn at the close of the book of Genesis, Joseph remained in Egypt. He and his father's house, that means the sons of his brothers, they continued to live in Egypt together. Joseph lived to be 110 years. When it came time for Joseph to die, Joseph says to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Even though Egypt had become his home, a place where he had risen to great heights and great power, Joseph had not forgotten God's promise told to him by his father, Jacob. And he reminded his brethren, his countrymen, of that promise as he was dying. You know, we'll watch those on their bed in their last moment. And we see them there. But just as Joseph watched Jacob, soon it was Joseph that found himself on that bed dying. And it will be us one day. It will be our time. And how will we face those last moments? Jacob and Joseph died at home, surrounded by those that they cared the most about and those that loved them the most. And I think that a lot of us and most of us would like to die as Jacob and Joseph in their homes, but some may not have that choice because there is a need for specialized treatment that may force some to die in the hospital, or an unexpected death that may occur at any moment from the dangers of life. And without warning or opportunity to say goodbye, our life is taken from us and we're not able to spend those last moments with our loved ones. I think we'd all like to go like Joseph and Jacob, if possible. But it's not possible for all. And one man that was not able to be gathered with his family at his death was Stephen. But he died being stoned by those that he was trying to bless with the salvation of the Lord. But he did not die alone, because he looked up before he died. He looked up, gazed up into the heavens, and he saw Jesus standing at the right hand of God. So Stephen also died with a vision of the future and trying to tell others of that same future that they would have in the Lord. But they refused to hear it. Oftentimes we say that we're going to follow in the steps of those who have passed on because of the faith that they've showed us and the example that they set. Yet, as time passes by and lingers on, we forget those words that we said we were going to do. We need to remember those vows that we've taken for those that we've said at their funerals and said that we're going to follow in their steps and do what they did, living in the Lord. The perfect way to die is with faith, not how we die or who we're with, but faith, because all who die in the Lord will die with the Lord. The Lord will be with them in death as he was with Stephen. Abraham died believing in God's promise of a future for his people. Joseph died believing the same, to the point that he asked not to be buried in Egypt, but to carry his bones from there. And Stephen died preaching the gospel of salvation to his brethren. When our time comes, let us die like these men.